What is the craziest encounter of rich kid syndrome that you have experienced? This one is kinda mild I guess, but goes to show how clueless wealthy kids can be, completely unaware of the disparity between them and average income people. Anyways, he picked me up in a new $85,000 sports car one day, the newest Corvette special edition model fresh off the line. I said, holy crap dude, your car is incredible. He said he wished everyone knew he had to work a full month with his grandfather and earned it himself. I lived with 5 guys and I was the only one whose parents weren't millionaires. Not close at all. They never cleaned. About once a month I would deep clean the house, but 2 days later there was garbage and food on the floor. I found out they all told their parents the poor kid made all the messes when one of their moms came by to scream at me. Please finish your story. Tell me that you proved it was their fault. A guy I met in my early 20s was the richest person I've ever known. His dad was CFO for a big bank, but died when my friend was 14. He grew up in a massive mansion, had his rent paid for in a luxury rental building, and had unlimited funds for drugs. Eventually, his mom forced him to go to rehab, which he did for a couple of months. One day, while he was at rehab, my roommate got a call from him. He said he's outside and didn't know where else to go. He had been cut off from his money, knew that we had an extra room, and asked if he could stay with us while he learned basic life skills, getting a job, buying groceries, cleaning, budgeting, etc. We let him, against our better judgment. About a month in, he had managed to stay sober, keep a job, and not be such a parasitic piece of crap. His mom thought he was doing better so she reconnected him to his money. His whole attitude and demeanor completely changed. All of a sudden it's, I don't have to stay in this bad apartment, living like I'm poor. I don't even have to stop doing drugs. I've got my money back. He left right before rent was due and basically told us to frick ourselves. 2 months later, he had the exact same situation happen. His mom cut him off again, forced him to go to rehab. He left again and called us, but this time we figured he'd rather not live in our terrible apartment living like he's poor. A consulting manager I worked with was literally Stifler, even looked like him. He was a Harvard grad, dad was an exec at a huge consulting firm, smart, but incredibly ditzy and trying really hard to be normal. He walked into work one morning and asked one of his trainees if they got paid this week because he literally couldn't see the difference in his bank account. At least he's trying. Not scathing like most of the ones on here. I grew up attending a private school in a developing country, so a lot of my classmates were in the 1% of the country. Whenever we'd be swimming in the school pool, one friend of ours in particular would always remark that swimming is more fun if the pool has a current or waves. To which I had no idea what he was talking about and generally thought he was just being imaginative. One day he invited me over to his house for swimming and he had a 50-foot indoor pool that generated a current waves. He wasn't lying. They are a lot more fun. My college roommate's mom gave him fricking $1,400 for the weekend just randomly. He blew through the whole thing by Saturday, asked his mom for more money and was screaming at her because she promised $1,400 for the weekend and he spent most of what she gave him on Friday, which isn't a part of the weekend. Knew a trust fund girl whose dad gave her the money to start a company. She lost it when she went on vacation for 6 months and forgot she was supposed to pay her employees all the time. She assumed they would not get paid for 6 months and be there when she got back. I quizzed her on this for a few minutes and it was clear she had no idea what a job was. I hope they sued her for whatever missing pay they were owed before they quit. Good friend of mine. My dad bought me a house and now I can't buy a house of my own. Stamp duties here are insane to prevent rich people from driving up property prices. Although I have to say that I really respect my friend very much for his desire to actually step out of his dad's shadow. I actually have a bit of a different story than most of these. Met a friend in Econ 101 on my first day. Pretty humble kid and all around good guy, so we got along well and were in the same study group. Turns out, kid's dad owned like a supermarket chain in HK and his mom is a managing director at a hedge fund on mainland China and they were crap loaded. He never let it show though and I only found out after about 3-4 months of knowing him. His parents put him in boarding school when he was a kid, but he said it was actually pretty tough since the school gave zero fricks about privilege. Classes were like one teacher to every 3 kids and they were hardcore. They eventually sent him overseas for high school in this really upscale place in North Carolina for 4 years. He was one of the most well-mannered kid I knew in college and super humble. Got straight A's throughout college and made me pay attention to since I was prone to slacking. I ended up doing an internship in my junior year with his mom's fund and she wrote me a letter of recommendation later on to help me get a job. We still keep in touch occasionally and he's working for a bank in HK now, pretty much following his mom's footsteps. Still come by NY to visit every year and we usually have dinner with ourselves. It's really weird cause I see these kids at school driving Audis, BMWs, and this kid is just there to study like everyone else, even though his parents might be the most loaded people I've seen at the school. Look up Corona Del Mar High School cheating scandal. Happened at my school. Parents paid around $50,000 a piece to have a tutor bug the school computers and change students' grades. They all lawyered up big time when it came out and all the kids got off free and all made it into their top 3 schools. I would also like to add that this made the news, and all the parents whined that their children were innocent and just had a bad tutor. Had a girl I went to school with total 4 brand new cars. Think Range Rover, Escalade, etc. I was also in a class with this girl when the teacher handed out papers that needed to be signed by a parent, and she signed it herself and tried to turn it in the same period as it was handed out and freaked out when the teacher wouldn't accept it. Kids who would talk crap and pick fights and then turn around and say, "If you touch me my dad will sue." There are a lot more. Oh man, I went to CDM for junior high. Freaking miserable. Miserable place. Girl I went to high school with got a Mercedes for her 16th birthday. Bitched and moaned about the fact that she didn't get a Lexus because her name was Lexi and she thought it would be so cool for Lexi to drive a Lexus with a custom license plate saying Lexi. Her parents did cave and buy her a Lexus for her 17th birthday. My college roommate threw a massive tantrum, like on the floor screaming and crying, because her parents got her a used big ass truck for graduation. It was a 2013 truck with less than 10k miles that was fully upgraded, loaded with every possible add-on. We graduated in 2014. The car was maybe a year old. She already had a 2009 Range Rover. This happened a couple of weeks ago at the Infiniti dealership. I was in the waiting room with a very well dressed lady for our loaner cars. She left the waiting room to look at her loaner and came back crying. She said she drives a fully loaded QX80 and they gave her a QX60 with nothing in it. I said sorry that happened and asked how long she was going to have the loaner for. She said a couple of hours. I wanted to tell her to suck it up, but instead I sat there quiet thinking how life must be easy for her to cry over a loaner car. A Saudi guy in the UK got in a crash with light damage to one side of brand new Mercedes. He called for one of his assistants to come get him, even though the car was fully drivable. My friend rolled up on call with his tow truck and asked the guy where he wanted the Mercedes towed. The guy gave him the keys and said, "Keep it, I don't want it." Dang, I need to befriend some Saudi princes. A friend I met at uni flew from Auckland to London for a week to go shopping. Clothes were cheaper in London, so to him it made sense. His parents were from Singapore and had no idea just how much cheaper cars were in New Zealand. So when he said he needed $70K for a Toyota Corolla, they gave him the money and he bought a used BMW M3. When he went home for the summer, he asked if I could mind the car for him. Given his dad had pretty much cut him off at that point, he just said I had to pay for insurance on it and I could treat it like my own. But as a 19-year-old sharing a flat and barely getting by, there was no way I could cover the cost of insurance, let alone petrol. Girl got a 2-year-old Range Rover for her 17th, now 20 and still doesn't have her license. Sits unused in their 4-car garage. I used to have a friend who would constantly say I love when my dad gives me money, and if I ask for a certain amount of money my parents always give me $50 extra. This girl then bought an apartment, boasting about it on Facebook and how proud she was of herself, how at 23 she was able to afford a home at such a young age all on her own. Still makes me want to face plant into a pile of jagged rocks. Dad bought his college-age daughter a house in a very nice neighborhood so that she and her friends could live rent-free while they attended university. He remodeled the entire house. In all, he probably spent close to $2 million. 2 weeks after moving in, they left a candle burning while they went to the store to get snacks for a football game. Came home and the house was on fire. A month later, it was good as new for them to move back in. I mean, the upside is that he probably had insurance on the home. Not exactly rich kid syndrome, but there was this family that had 2 children who attended the elementary school that was connected to my middle school. Every day the 2 parents would leave the house and drive separately to pick up their 2 kids before returning home. I should mention at this point that they each drove a Lamborghini, one black and one orange, back to back in the pickup line to get their kids from elementary school. At first I thought they were just being showy, but then I realized that they were 2-seaters, so this was really the only way to do it. Modern problem. My personal favorite was in college. Kids down the hall from me bought a brand new Fender Stratocaster and played with it for a day and got bored and sold it to me case and all for $20. I still have it and play it 15 years later. It's a great guitar. I knew someone who goes out of the country just to have a haircut. Spoiler, the guy's from the Vatican. My brother and I grew up working class, but when my mom remarried we were all of a sudden in the 1%. One day when we were in high school, my brother's girlfriend came over to our place and tears. It turns out the family's Mercedes was in the shop and she had to use the Audi. I had a scholarship to private school for my secondary education. 11-18, we were by no means poor, but compared to the people who were paying full school fees I was a peasant. The vast majority of the students were wealthy, and about half of them were spoiled little brats. Most of the kids got given cars for their 17th birthday in anticipation of passing their driving tests. One boy in particular in my year had a September birthday, so was one of the first to take his test, and he had a huge house garden, so he already knew how to drive. You can drive on private land at any age here. On the day he passed his test, he got dropped off back at his school in his shiny new sports car. I don't know what type it was. I jaff about cars, but everyone else seemed impressed. He picked up a couple of friends to go for a spin, and before he got 100 meters up the road, he completely wrecked the fricking car. His dad bought him a new one the next day and he complained that it was the wrong color. Had a kid that lived across the hall from me my freshman year of college from Honduras. During one of the icebreakers after freshman move-in he leaned to me to ask if I knew when the maids came to make his bed clean. I guess his family was very well off in his home country and the entire semester was an eye-opener for him in actually taking care of himself. I don't know if it's like this in Honduras, but I'm from a Latin American country and maids are actually quite affordable in these type of nations, at least mine. My family could afford one as a child despite being middle class and having one of my parents be unemployed at the time. And an apartment complex we later moved into had someone that would come and clean the apartments every week or so. First day as a librarian in a private school. Help a 7-year-old with the printer. He offers to tip me. I like this one because he is not a snot. He's just trying to be polite. There was this rich kid in our class who was literally disgusted by us buying used stuff, like computer parts, on eBay. Once during conversation I said I bought on eBay memory module for my PC and said to me that I should have a little dignity, and if I buy used stuff I should keep it to myself. I know a garbage man that works in rich neighborhoods and takes out trash around move out time for the uber rich kid university. Every year, he finds 200-300 game consoles, the newest ones, and sometimes desktop PCs. The kids don't want to take them home, they just throw them all out. He makes a good $40k a year on eBay. He just cleans stuff up and sells it, nice supplementary income. I watched rich kids of Instagram on YouTube and I'm still recovering. Kids trying to straight up bribe bouncers and even police officers. This is less surprising when you realize they were international students from rich families where bribes are common expected. Thankfully, they'd learn really quick to not do that. I was talking to a guy who does a lot of work in the developing world. He says bribing a cop in those countries is the equivalent of tipping a server here. You've been visited by the all-seeing doggers. Good visions will come to you but only if you comment watch me papas. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.